Greetings, fellow whimsical pastel artists. Today I'm going to demonstrate some heavy blending techniques using this illustration here from start to finish. Since this is a beach picture, I'm going to start with my blue. I always like starting with blue or yellow if I'm going to do sand or sky, something like that. But I'm going to start with my blue. I'm going to start on the wave. And I'm using a scrumbling technique, which is I'm just heavily scribbling some blue. Now I'm not trying to completely cover the paper. I'm actually going to leave some white space available. So this is going to be looking from the beach straight out towards the wave. And the wave is going to be curling over in the middle. So I'm gonna bring the ends, the right and the left, up a little bit because that's where the foam is going to be falling in a triangle right towards me. Now I'll probably extend this later on to make it bigger. So now I'm taking some white and I'm going to soften up that blue. Remember, white is a really great blending tool. And now I'm going to grab black. And I'm going to put some black, which will also mix the blue. So I'll get a little bit of blue and black mixed together. But I'm putting black right underneath where the curl of the wave would come over because it would actually create a shadow. If the sun's behind this scene in the sky and the wave's breaking towards us, there's going to be a shadow where, especially where the curl is coming over. There would be all this hollow space between the back of the wave and then the front of the lip of the wave with its breaking over into a barrel. So there's going to be some shadows under there. And as those shadows reach out to the left and the right, they're going to become maybe a little thinner. So in the end, you're going to see a heavier shadow right under the point of the wave that's breaking towards me. So I'm adding some black in here. Good thing about it is if I add a little too much or it looks a little dark, I'm just going to bring some blue back in and then I can mix it that way. So you can see the blue will really help tone it up or tone down the black. And I can bring it into the white again. And this is what's going to end up giving me a much richer, fuller value or gradations of blue. Now I'm going to move into the sky. So I'm going to put my point of light, which is going to be the sun, over there on the left side of the page behind the wave. And you can see I'm going to start bringing orange in above where I think the foam's going to be. So now you get to start seeing how this wave is breaking. There's just a thin strip of sky up there with the sun. I actually started this illustration a little high up on the page, so I'm running out of room on the sky, which I typically would make bigger, but that's okay. So now I'm using some yellow on top of that orange to smooth that out. So again, with a heavy pressure technique, you're going to be using one pastel to push around another pastel, and in the process blending. Taking my yellow, I'm going to blend a little more, or my orange rather. I'm going to blend a little more, and I'm just going to keep going back and forth with those. So I'll take the yellow sometimes, I'll take the orange sometimes, and I'm just going to extend to the outside because I think, this is an experiment, but I think I'm going to end up wanting to keep this one. So I'm just going to bring it all the way to the outside in case I decide it comes out really nice and I want to frame it. So I'm just going to repeat with my orange and my yellow. Bring it out, and then I'll probably continue that with my blue later as I get a chance. And you can see I'm really forming how this wave is coming from a very high arch, then over to a very steep barreling arch towards me. And I'm just going to add the blue to extend this image a little bit. So here we are. You can see I've extended the wave, I've extended the sky. You can see now how this lip with the shadow of the black underneath it is giving it some dimension. And I'm put a little bit of yellow in there, just in the blue, and I'm bringing now the blue strokes across the page because that's kind of how the ocean would be rippling back and forth. And then as it gets towards the wave, it's sort of thrust forward. So I'm putting some blue in there, a little bit of white, come back with the blue. I put a little yellow because it would pick up some of the sky that would reflect off some of the ripples in the water and some of those little waves. And then I might add a little more yellow right where the sun would be, which would give sort of that channel of light that I would see in the reflection. Be a little stronger there. One of the things I like to do is I will keep going back and forth. So you can see I'm adding a little bit of white on top of some of the black, because I want that arch to come a little more forward. And then I also want some shadows underneath where some of that foam is already being curled under the lip of the wave. So it would be in the shadow, so it wouldn't be as bright as the foam that's on top of that curl. And then I'm putting some little bit of foam that has broken off of the wave in the form of stippling. So it looks like some of the foam is just sort of disconnected from the wave itself, or it's being thrown forward or backward. It gives it a little more of an action look to it. And again, I'm bringing in some of that shadow, which, I have a lot here. I might lighten it up a little bit later, and maybe a little too much. So actually, what I can do is I'm taking this pencil with a nice sharp, it's unsharpened. So I'm using that edge to just peel off all that black and white pastel there. So I'm completely cleaning it off down to the blue, because now I know I can probably bring white, nice clean white pastel. I can make that a little brighter again. So I'm going to take this nice white pastel and I'm going to bring back in the white, a little more stark white. I went a little too far with the shadow. But this is the interesting thing about the high pressure technique, is you can really, really go over areas to improve them, subtract some, go back in. It is very forgiving, and it's a great style, and it's loose. It does take a lot of pressure, so you're going to have to rest your hands every once in a while. But you can see I'm playing around adding some of that white, and I now I have it to where it's really rich, and I'm going to extend my black again to get that shadow. I lost some of my black because I extended the curl of the wave. So now I'm going to bring some of that black back, and I'm just going to scrumble it. It's going to be a little deeper and longer in a vertical fashion underneath the lip, and then I'm going to bring it over to meet the more steep part of the wave on the right. I'm bringing my blue in now just to smooth that black out a little bit. So I'm not trying to get rid of the black, but I just want to sort of give it more of a consistency that the rest of the wave has. Like I said, you can just keep going back and forth until you get what it is you're looking for. Now I'm actually adding some black hash marks, not too many, and I'm putting them in the direction of how the water would be pulling up. So on the left and the right, the water would come up on a little bit of an angle to the left, angle to the right. In the center, since we're looking straight at it, it would be coming straight up from in front of us. So that's how this wave is going to get pulled. That's how the wave is going to get pulled. So I'm putting some of these in, and they're a little dark now, and I will just use my blue to smooth them out. So you can see I'm using a little lighter technique, but it's still a heavier pressure technique because I'm not using a rag or anything like that, but I am lightening up my stroke. There would be some reflection, so I'm going to lighten up the very center of that curl, and I'm going to use my white while I have it to give me a little more horizontal play on the water that would be between the beach and the wave. Again, like I did with the black, I'm going to show some of the direction of the wave, and I can come back with blue and darken that up a little bit. So now I have a little bit of blue, black, white, all playing in to give this direction of the water where it's being pulled. I'm cleaning up the sky a little bit with some red to give it a little more fiery sky. I'm really starting to like this. So I'm gonna put a little extra effort into it, make it something that I think I'm probably gonna keep for myself. So I think I'm gonna like the red because it's really, again, it's the opposite of that blue. And those orange and reds are opposite of those cool colors that are in there. And so it's just gonna make everything more dynamic. And step up those complementary colors. Here I'm just touching up some of the blue. Again, I'm going to bring this all the way out to the edges of the paper because I may want to frame this, and it's 9 by 12 the paper, which they do make mats and frames that fit 9 by 12. So I'm going to bring it all the way out. And again, here's the stippling, because there would be some foam that would be trailing from behind the peak of that wave. So they would be behind it in the sky. And this again makes it look like this wave is thrusting itself forward. I'm going to create a beach in the foreground, and I really want it to be stunning. So I'm actually going to start with some red. I'm thinking like this is our sunset scene, maybe a sunrise scene actually. It would be much redder in the morning. And so I'm going to use some red with some purple. And then to contrast that, I might throw in even some dark greens and some bright greens somewhere in there. So kind of almost like a painted landscape type of look. So I'm just gonna bring in some of my bold, warm colors, and then maybe work in some of the cool colors underneath it with that green in the foreground. I enjoy taking a lot of risks working with the warm color family and the cool color family next to each other, because it does give you some really dynamic looks and contrast. And again, I'm going to take my yellow, which plays with everybody, and some of those white areas at the top that haven't been filled in. I'm going to draw a little bit of yellow across there. You can just see this just gives it a very, very colorful, painted look. And now I'm going to grab a little pink. I'm going to lighten up some of that purple that I have in there. Might even drag some over the red. Stay away from the green, that'll just turn brown. But I'm going to lighten up some of those areas just to give it a little more tonal quality, a little more of that painted look, which will be all in contrast to the cool colors of the ocean in front of it. So to show the grandeur of this wave, I'm actually going to put a tiny surfer contemplating going out into this massive surf. He's going to be only about an inch or two tall on that beach right in the foreground. So I'm going to put in a black silhouette since he would be behind the sunlight and we'd be looking from the back, the shadow of this person. So I'm going to put in a rough longboard. So this board ideally would be around 9 feet long in real life. So I'm going to be about an inch here, inch and a half. And then I'm going to put a small figurine, stick figure. Stick figures work really well with these kinds of small silhouettes. I'm going to put in a rough stick figure, and then I'm going to use my scratching tool to shape him out. Now I'm scratching out and defining his arm a little bit, the board, his torso. It's really just a stick figure. I'm going to scratch it out just to give him a little more definition. If it doesn't work out, I'll just add a little more black and scratch it out again. Even gave him a shadow coming from the direction of the sun and then reaching out towards the other side where that sun shadow would end up. And I'm going to shape up the board. I'm using this fingernail cuticle shaper that I got at CVS. I really like it. It has a really sharp point on one end, and then on the other side it has sort of like a spoon. So you get a couple different techniques out of there. So I took out the shadow a little bit. I might want to add a little more back in there. I might have taken out too much. So I'll come back with my black pastel. And I'll just keep going back and forth like this until I get the shape I want. You could use a piece of tracing paper and draw it on there. Figure out how big, how small you want it. It's another great way to do it, but I'm just going to keep putting it in there until I get it shaped up. And I'll bring back my shadow again. And then if I have to shape it, I'll shape it with my scratch tool. While I have the black, I'm going to put a thin black line on that horizon, right where the sand, if you imagine walking over the hill down to the water, there would be some shadows in the sand. There would be some darker areas. I like to put that line there to really make it look like there's some distinction between the beach and the water. Even though it is a very thin line, your eye will pick it up and recognize it. So there's the completed drawing. I hope you enjoyed it. And again, have a great day. Keep pushing those pastels around and be creative.